Most guys kind of make this same classic mistake when they're starting to get to know a woman. They dive straight in, asking about her past, her exes, her childhood, that last heartbreak she went through. And honestly, on the surface, that seems like the honest, direct approach, right? Like you're genuinely trying to connect, get deep fast. But here's the thing, the real catch. The very moment you ask, she automatically starts curating, editing, filtering everything. It's not even usually because she's trying to be manipulative or anything like that. It's just how people protect themselves, build walls without thinking. And that means, inevitably, the version of the past you actually get is the carefully polished version she wants you to see, not necessarily the messy reality. But what if, just maybe, you didn't actually have to ask? What if you could figure out her past not through the stories she consciously chooses to tell you over coffee, but through the subtle signs she doesn't even realize she's constantly showing? Because here's the real truth, the core of it. People don't just talk about their past. They literally live it out every single day. It bleeds into their habits, flashes in their instant reactions, hides in their silences, slips out in casual offhand comments, even shows in the way they look at you when you accidentally hit a nerve with certain words. Her past? It's written all over her, like invisible ink, only visible under the right light, if you just know what you're supposed to be looking for. Seriously, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes cracking a complex case, and you definitely, absolutely do not need to interrogate her like she's on the witness stand. You just need to learn how to observe, really pay attention. And once you get the hang of it, you'll potentially know more about her deep stuff than even her closest friends might. You'll sense whether she's still quietly haunted by someone, whether she's genuinely healed and moved on, whether she's actually ready and able to build a solid future with someone, or if, underneath it all, she's still sort of living in the emotional wreckage of her past. In this video, I'll break down exactly how to read those signs you're probably missing, what they truly mean beneath the surface, and crucially, how to protect yourself from getting blindsided by a story you never signed up to be part of. One super easy way to peek into her emotional past: just watch how she handles attention, especially from guys. I mean, not just how she blushes or brushes off your compliment, but how she moves through a room, interacts online, reacts when the spotlight suddenly lands on her. Does she subtly downplay it, stay grounded? Or does she practically light up like it's the very first time she's ever truly felt seen? Pay super close attention to how often, unprompted, she brings up male attention herself. Like if she's always talking about who's sliding into her DMs, how many guys flirted with her at the gym yesterday, or how men just won't leave her alone. Well, it might not actually be about the stories themselves, It might be screaming about the deep, unmet need behind them. A woman who felt ignored, neglected, or completely invisible in a past relationship, romantic or even way back in childhood, often, without realizing it, learns to measure her entire worth by how many eyes are fixed on her right now. And the kicker? She might not even be consciously aware she's doing this. It's not simple vanity. It's pure, raw validation seeking. There's a massive difference between a woman who genuinely enjoys attention and one who fundamentally needs it to feel whole, to feel like she exists. The first one, fun, confident. The second one, honestly, that can be dangerous territory, because the moment that steady stream of attention stops coming reliably from you, she might instinctively start looking elsewhere to fill that void. Even if she doesn't mean any harm, it's not about disloyalty. It's more like an emotional addiction playing out. You're not hunting for clues in how many selfies she posts or how she dresses. You're trying to suss out the why behind it all. Does she crave deep connection or just surface-level admiration? That single question, answered by observation, can reveal volumes about her past relational wounds more honestly than any story she'd ever deliberately tell you out loud. Then there's how she talks about other women,
Seriously, you can learn a ton, not just from how she talks to you, but by listening carefully to how she talks about her female friends, coworkers, or even random strangers. Notice those little moments when she mentions them. Is her tone generally kind, supportive, or is it laced with this subtle sarcasm, judgment, or an undercurrent of competition? If practically every woman she brings up is described as fake, a complete mess, trying way too hard, or probably cheating on her boyfriend, yeah, that's not just some quirky personality trait. That's often a mirror, reflecting back her own unresolved insecurities, past betrayals she endured, or rivalries that left deep scars she's still carrying around. You're not just listening to her words, you're tuning into what still hurts. Women frequently express their own emotional history through projection. A woman who's constantly criticizing others for being too flirty might have been cheated on. One who's always skeptical about other women's successes might secretly feel perpetually behind in her own life. And when she says things like, "Oh, I just don't really get along with other women, there's so much drama," framing it as independence, that's often trauma dressed up as detachment. It could mean she's been badly burned by past friendships, or that seeing every other woman as a competition became her default mode of emotional safety. If she's genuinely at peace with herself, she'll usually be pretty peaceful towards others too. But if every other woman seems like a potential threat, it's definitely worth asking yourself what past experience wired her to feel like life is one big exhausting battlefield. These casual moments, that's where her past shows up in plain sight without you needing to dig or interrogate. All you got to do is listen, not to the gossipy content, but to the underlying pattern. That's where the real unfiltered truth lives and breathes. If you truly want to understand someone's past, don't just watch how they act when everything's sunshine and rainbows. Pay intense attention to how they behave when things inevitably go sideways, when conflict pops up. Conflict has this funny, almost predictable way of dragging the past right up to the surface. And I'm not talking about huge screaming matches or dramatic meltdowns necessarily. I mean those everyday, mundane moments of friction when plans suddenly change last minute, when you forget something important, when she feels ignored or maybe misunderstood. Does she instantly go quiet and withdraw into herself? Does she lash out, quickly assign blame, or try to make you feel guilty? Or does she actually stay calm, address the issue directly, try to understand your side, and work towards moving forward? These reactions, they're almost never random. They're like emotional echoes bouncing straight out of her personal history. A woman who experienced abandonment, deep emotional neglect, or betrayal will often respond to conflict with either intense fear, shutting down, or fierce defensiveness, attacking. She might shut down completely because she learned long ago, probably painfully, that expressing her true feelings just led to punishment or dismissal. Or she might go straight into attack mode because in her past, showing vulnerability was basically an invitation to get hurt. Either way, her behavior during even minor conflict is fundamentally shaped by the survival mechanisms she had to develop emotionally. You'll notice it in how quickly she escalates small things or avoids any hint of discomfort. If she instantly assumes the absolute worst about your intentions, she's likely still carrying around emotional blueprints written by someone else entirely. The way she fights isn't just about you in that moment. It's often a direct reenactment of how she learned to protect herself long before you met. This is exactly why you don't need to aggressively dig for information. People unconsciously reenact their emotional past far more frequently and honestly than they ever deliberately retell it. And when conflict arises, those old unhealed wounds often rush right back into the spotlight. Your job isn't necessarily to fix them. It's to recognize the pattern playing out in front of you and ask yourself a crucial question. Are you genuinely prepared and willing to be part of a healing process, or are you signing up to get caught in the painful crossfire of someone else's unresolved internal war?
Figuring out her relationship timeline, you really don't have to bluntly ask, "So, when exactly was your last relationship?" In fact, that kind of direct question usually just gets you the surface level, clean, edited version she's comfortable sharing. But if you actually want to know what her romantic past really looks like, all you need to do is listen closely. Really tune in. Because her everyday stories, the specific way she phrases things, even how she casually refers to people in her life, they're all sprinkled with these subtle, revealing clues. For example, if she offhandedly mentions, "Oh, I used to love that little sushi place on 5th. We went there all the time back then." Pause right there on that "we." That tiny word, it's rarely about a platonic friend. It's often a little breadcrumb dropped from a significant relationship she might not be ready to name or discuss openly yet. You'll also start noticing patterns in how often she refers to the past, how long ago things supposedly happened, how fresh the emotions still seem when she talks about them. A woman who casually drops, "Yeah, that was like 2 years ago now," is actually letting you map her timeline without even realizing she's doing it. But if she consistently avoids mentioning timeframes altogether or skips over emotional milestones like they're totally irrelevant, that could be a quiet signal pointing towards unresolved feelings lurking beneath. You might also hear it in phrases she uses about transitions, things like, "after everything completely fell apart," or "I basically had to rebuild myself from scratch afterwards." Phrases that strongly suggest something way heavier than just a standard breakup. They hint at deep recovery work. The key shift here is to stop relying so much on direct questions. People naturally reveal far, far more when they're just relaxed in conversation, chatting freely, not feeling like they're sitting under a microscope being examined. She will tell you about her past, absolutely, just not always neatly packaged with dates and clear labels. Sometimes her noticeable silence about a specific period in her life, that silence itself becomes the loudest, most telling clue of all. You just have to be the kind of guy who learns to hear what isn't being said out loud. One of the most revealing things a woman will ever unintentionally show you is how she talks about men in general. And I don't mean how she talks about you specifically when you're getting along. I mean her broad commentary on men as a concept. What's her tone? Her underlying attitude when she mentions her exes in passing, talks about her male friends, or even comments on random guys in a movie or on the news. Is it playful, neutral, balanced? Or is there a detectable edge, something bitter, guarded, maybe a little too sharp? Because that specific tone usually carries a whole history packed inside it. When she makes a joke like, "Ugh, men, am I right? They're the worst," it might sound harmless at first, maybe even flirty. But if that same joke keeps cropping up and there's always this little sting behind the smile, yeah, that usually means the joke is rooted in something painfully real. Someone, or maybe several someones, made her genuinely feel that way once upon a time. You're not just passively listening to her current opinion, you're essentially witnessing the living history of her trust, or more accurately, the damage done to it. If she automatically assumes men are inherently liars, cheaters, emotionally stunted, or unavailable, it's not because she read some negative article. It's overwhelmingly likely because she lived that reality, experienced it firsthand. And here's the tricky part. While she might be fun, engaging, flirty, even genuinely affectionate with you right now in this moment, those deep-seated negative core beliefs about men don't just magically vanish overnight because you're treating her decently. If her fundamental view of men is painted in pessimistic colors, it will inevitably shape how she relates to you, especially when things get tough, when doubts creep in. Maybe she becomes overly suspicious if you're quiet for a day. Maybe she expects you to abandon her before there's any logical reason, and she starts pulling away preemptively. That's not simply mood swings, that's her past memories actively steering her present reactions. Understanding this dynamic isn't about judging her harshly, it's about seeing her clearly, realistically.
It means recognizing what experiences actively formed these beliefs, and then you get to make an informed decision. Are you walking into a mutual relationship built on fresh ground? Or are you inadvertently stepping right into the middle of someone else's ongoing damage loop? Because if she's still mentally carrying the heavy weight of every man who ever broke her trust, sooner or later, consciously or not, she's going to hand some of that weight directly to you and quietly expect you to carry it for her. If you genuinely want to understand how a woman forms deep emotional bonds, look closely at how she talks about her family, particularly her parents. You don't need to pry for deep, dark trauma or intensely personal stories. Seriously, just pay close attention to the way she frames them, the subtle tones she uses. When she mentions her father, for instance, is there warmth there? Distance? A hint of bitterness? Or just a kind of quiet, resigned shrug? That underlying tone will tell you infinitely more than any dramatic, tear-filled story she might eventually share. For example, if she says something like, "Yeah, my dad was around, I guess. We weren't super close or anything, but whatever." Really listen to that whatever. That single word is doing a lot of heavy emotional lifting. That apparent indifference? It's rarely the whole truth. It's often a carefully worn mask covering disappointment that's been buried for so long, it just feels normal now. The relationship she had with her father, more than anyone else often, tends to set the initial powerful blueprint for how she views men in general, how she approaches trust, and what feels like emotional safety to her. If she constantly had to earn his love or approval, she might carry that dynamic forward, feeling an ingrained need to constantly prove herself worthy in her romantic relationships too. If the love she received was wildly inconsistent, warm affection one day, cold silence or criticism the next, she may unconsciously expect, even brace for, that same unpredictability from you. On the flip side, if she grew up in a genuinely nurturing, emotionally secure home environment, that foundational stability usually shines through in how calmly she handles conflict, how quickly she can de-escalate and find her center again, and how clearly she can communicate her needs without huge drama. Her family dynamic operates like the hidden operating system running quietly in the background of her entire emotional world. It doesn't shout its presence, but it fundamentally controls how everything else functions. You're not prying by noticing this, you're simply observing the clues she naturally offers. How does she react when you casually ask about holiday traditions? How does she speak about her mom in passing conversation? Does she visibly roll her eyes at the mere idea of mandatory family time? Or does she genuinely light up when sharing a fond childhood memory? Those seemingly small moments, they're all potential access points giving you glimpses into her deepest emotional foundation. And the hard truth is, people very rarely completely outgrow the core emotional language, the patterns of relating that they were raised with. So, if you truly want an idea of how she'll likely love you, start by quietly noticing how she learned about love right at home. There's something incredibly telling, almost like a secret window, into what makes a woman unexpectedly emotional, and just as importantly, what seemingly doesn't affect her much at all. You're not just scanning for obvious tears or big dramatic reactions. You're watching for those smaller, quieter moments when something unexpectedly hits her sideways in a way she clearly wasn't anticipating or prepared for. Maybe it's a seemingly random movie scene about abandonment or betrayal that suddenly makes her go completely quiet, her mood shifting noticeably. Maybe it's a specific song about heartbreak that she always skips the second it comes on, without explanation. Or perhaps it's the opposite scenario. She seems strangely, almost unnervingly, unfazed by things that would genuinely upset or rattle most other people. These reactions aren't random quirks. They're like emotional footprints left behind from past experiences, scars she might still be carrying, or numbness she learned to adopt long ago just to survive the emotional terrain. Sometimes what stirs her up isn't even directly related to romance or relationships. It could be something as simple as feeling left out of a group invite, or someone nearby raising their voice in frustration, even if it's not directed at her. And if she responds with an intensity that feels disproportionate to the event, or if she completely shuts down emotionally, that's a significant clue. People generally don't overreact without some relevant history fueling it. That outsized emotional response is a signal flare. It silently says, this specific feeling has happened before. It says, this hurt me deeply once. And it might also be whispering, I'm still not fully over that hurt. On the flip side, if she seems consistently cold, detached, or dismissive when you try to share your own vulnerable moments, or if she casually brushes off someone else's obvious pain, well, that detachment isn't always a sign of strength or resilience. It can very much be emotional armor that was constructed way too early in life, a defense mechanism that never fully came down. You won't uncover this landscape by directly asking, hey, what kinds of things make you emotional? You'll map it out gradually, patiently, by simply watching her reactions unfold in real time. The things that unexpectedly move her, or the things that leave her strangely unmoved, act like emotional highlighters, tracing back directly to a version of her past self you've never actually met. And the more of these moments you quietly observe and connect, the more clearly you'll start to see the crucial difference between someone who has genuinely faced and processed their past and someone who's still actively running from its shadows.
The smartest guys, the ones who truly understand what's going on beneath the surface, don't operate by firing off a million direct questions. They watch. They observe patiently. They don't aggressively dig for stories or confessions. They create space and wait for the deeper truth to naturally reveal itself in the quiet, unguarded spaces. The offhand comments tossed out casually, the subtle patterns she repeats without any awareness she's even doing it. That right there is the fundamental difference between interrogation, which builds walls, and genuine observation, which quietly sees through them. Honestly, anyone can bluntly ask, so what exactly happened in your last relationship, and get handed the polished, rehearsed version she's comfortable sharing. But the man who's truly paying attention, who's observant, he often already knows the core answer long before he asks, because he saw how she subtly flinched when he had to cancel plans last minute, how she instinctively shut down emotionally when things started getting too intimate too fast, or how her whole face genuinely lit up when someone finally praised her for her intelligence or kindness rather than just her looks. These little moments aren't random coincidences. They're like unique emotional fingerprints left everywhere she goes. Being observant like this doesn't mean being cold, detached, or calculating. It means cultivating emotional literacy. It means learning to read the room, and more importantly, to read her with a level of awareness and perception that ultimately makes you the kind of man who doesn't easily fall for the surface mask everyone presents. Because when you rely solely on the words she tells you, you're often just buying into the story she tells herself to cope, to survive her past. But when you learn to rely on careful, empathetic observation, you start seeing glimpses of the real woman underneath it all, the one who might still be quietly hurting, the one who might actually be ready and eager to grow, or the one who simply isn't there yet. Either way, now you know. And that kind of clarity, that deeper understanding, that's real power. So stop chasing answers so aggressively. Instead, learn to invite them in subtly. Let her reveal herself slowly, naturally, almost unknowingly. Because the genuine truth about people always leaks out through their behavior, their patterns, their reactions. The only real question left is, are you perceptive enough, sharp enough to actually see it when it happens right in front of you? If you've stuck with me this far, honestly, you're already miles ahead of most guys out there trying to figure this stuff out. Because now, you're not just passively hearing the words a woman says. You're starting to actively see who she truly is beneath the surface presentation. And once you really learn to observe with this level of clarity, this depth of insight, your whole approach to dating genuinely changes. You stop wasting precious time on dead-end connections. You stop getting swept away by the polished highlight reel people show the world.
and you start connecting with women on a level that's far more real, grounded, and crucially, on your terms. If anything I've shared here gave you even one solid insight you didn't have before, maybe something that clicked or felt true, drop a quick comment below and let me know what part hit hardest for you. Was it something about what she says, or maybe more importantly, something about what she pointedly doesn't say? I read every single one, genuinely. And look, if you're the kind of man who truly wants to understand the deeper layers of this, the real psychology, the patterns most guys completely miss, the complex emotional dynamics playing out, then hit that subscribe button right now. Don't wait. This is honestly just scratching the surface, the very beginning. In the very next video, I'm breaking down the 5 most common types of emotional baggage you can actually spot within the first 10 minutes of meeting a woman, no deep interrogation needed, and more importantly, how to tell the difference between someone who's genuinely done the healing work and someone who's still expertly hiding behind walls. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss that one. Until then, keep your eyes open, your standards high, and your own inner peace fiercely protected. I'll see you soon.